In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a measuring cup cover. This one has a food-safe plastic lining so it can be wiped clean, and it'll help keep the moisture inside the measuring cup, so it's good if you're storing things like salad dressings or sauces. It has an opening for a handle, so it'll work with most measuring cups that have this open style of handle. The free pattern comes in small, medium, and large, which will fit measuring cups that are 1 cup, 2 cup, and 4 cup in capacity. This free printable pattern can be found on gatheredseams.com, along with tips for if you want to sell these measuring cup covers at craft shows or on Etsy, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. You'll have your 2 pieces for the top of your cover, your bottom piece that is food-safe plastic, your elastic, and your bias tape. So we're going to start by sewing these 2 top pieces together, and you're going to sew along this edge using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you're going to stop sewing 2 inches from the bottom. So you can use a pin to mark that or a temporary fabric marker. Next, you can press that seam open. Place wrong sides together. So for your food safe plastic, that's typically the side that's a little more rough and this side is smooth. And then just clip around the edges, leaving where your slit is open. Now we're going to sew on either side of the slit, and you're going to sew up one side, across, and down the other side. Next, you're going to cut a slit in your plastic, and you want to leave about a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 of an inch of it intact at the end. Next, you're going to sew your bias tape onto your circle, and you're going to start on the plastic side. I just find that the material feeds through the machine a little bit easier. And you're going to start sewing about 3 inches away from the end. So you'll start sewing about there, leaving this loose, and just gently guide your bias tape around the curve as you go. Don't stretch on it, and make sure that the edge of your bias tape is just covering the edge of your circle, and you're going to stitch right in the crease of that first fold. As you come back around to the start of your bias tape, you're going to fold the first piece back and then layer the end of your tape over top. And we want to stop stitching right before this fold. So the easiest way I found to do that is to just layer it and then use a pin, stick it in, and then check it to see if that's where your stitching is. See, I'm a little far to the left there, and if that's where your fold is. So I'll take that out and just move it over, and then lift it up, and I need to come a little bit closer. So right there is perfect. And then you can either leave that pin in and just move it as you sew, or just use a temporary fabric marker to mark that point. Now to finish the 2 ends together of your bias tape, you're going to flip the end of it up so that your bias tape is completely open. So on that side it's down rather than being flipped up. And then you need to bring this piece so that it's perpendicular to it. And then you can stick a couple pins in there. And you're going to sew diagonally from this point where this raw edge and this raw edge intersect right down to where you stop stitching. So you're going to go at an angle like that. So now when you flip this over, you want to check to make sure that it looks nice and flat there. And if it does, you can cut off the ends of your bias tape. And then just finger press that seam open. And now we're going to flip our bias tape over and clip it into place so that your second fold is covering that line of stitching that we just completed. Use your temporary fabric marker or 2 pins just in the bias tape to mark where you're going to start stitching and stop stitching. So those lines should be about 1 inch or 2 apart so that you can feed your elastic through that channel. The other thing you want to keep in mind when you're sewing the other side of your bias tape on is that we need a safety pin to fit through this channel to feed our elastic through. So you want to stitch fairly close to this folded edge of your bias tape. Now we can feed our elastic through. So we'll put our safety pin through one end of the elastic and feed it through a couple inches. And then attach the second safety pin to the other end and just pin it to your bias tape just to make sure that you don't lose that end inside. You can stitch the 2 ends of your elastic together by just overlapping them and stitching back and forth, or you can just use a simple balloon knot. And now you want this knot to be back inside of your channel so that you don't have to sew around that. So you can just feed this, keep feeding your fabric around until it gets in there. You can also use a point turner to push that in a little bit if you need to. The final step is just to stitch that opening closed. You can work those gathers around just to distribute them evenly, and then you've got your finished measuring cup cover.